Welcome back. It's me. In this episode, we're going to talk about seed collection, what to do with them. Also, give you a little tour of my digs and look at this great greenhouse space at Brucemore. So come on in and let's get started, okay? Come on. So at Brucemore, we have this lovely modern greenhouse. We also have a Lord and Burnham greenhouse, which is an old garden greenhouse, which we'll do a whole other episode on. But this modern greenhouse has flaps up at the top that open automatically when it reaches a certain temperature, and they close automatically when it reaches a certain temperature, as well as the side vents. And we've got these groovy tables that move back and forth so that you can get in between to water the plants that you've transplanted. But as a home gardener, you don't really need something quite this big if you don't have 26 acres to plant. The important part is to keep that circadian rhythm going, using grow lights to create the daytime, having them shut off automatically to create the nighttime. And you can do that easily enough at home, very small ways. For example, our potting shed over here, or a seed starting bench is what I like to call it. It's got heat mats on the bottom, which you can buy easily from a nursery center, Ace Hardware, True Value, any place like that. You can build something very small, or you don't have to build anything at all. Just have a seed starting mat, which are these things right here, and that heats up the soil to recreate what would happen in nature for seeds to start, because the soil has to be a certain temperature in order for seeds to start. And then these grow lights will help with the daylight. You can leave them on a little bit longer because the winter days are shorter. So we'll have these on until like 6 or 7 at night. But then it's important to shut them off because you need that circadian rhythm, daylight and the dark night, in order to create or recreate what Mother Nature does naturally. So this is the Headhouse, which is attached to the greenhouse. And in the Headhouse is where you keep all your supplies. Plus we have this really nice potting bench so that when we have volunteers come in to help us pot up things, we can have them come in here and pot them up, as well as work in the greenhouse. But here I keep all of my supplies, my seed starting mixes and my seed starting material that I need, transplanting material that I'm going to need, seeds that I'm going to start for next year, big pile of potting soil right here. And we also have all of our different supplies that we need over the course of the year in here. Watering wands and hose repair kits, all that stuff. We have fish fertilizers that we use to feed, which I like to use during the early part of the year when I'm just starting to grow things. And the reason I like this is it's a mild fertilizer, but it gets all the natural micronutrients to grow in the soil to create healthy plants. It is derived from fish, from the breakdown of fish, dead fish. So it smells pretty much like fish, not a great smell, but it feeds the soil, I guess is what I would say, rather than the plant so much. We also have some orchid fertilizer. They have the micronutrients that orchids would need to best thrive in your climate or where you're growing them, because they're not growing in their natural environment. So you want to supplement them with some orchid fertilizer. And it's the one way that I've been able to get orchids to rebloom is to use this on a regular basis, like a monthly basis or every other week basis. We also have a root grow or plant starting mix. This usually contains the elements to create strong root growth for your plants, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are those 3 numbers that are on any fertilizer. And as you can see, the middle number here is a 10. So that is for strong root growth. 4 would be the amount of nitrogen that you have for leaf growth. And then the last is for overall growth on the plant. And then I like this Grow Big. Again, these are all organic fertilizers. And I like this Grow Big because I don't need a lot of it. I use about a cup in a 2-gallon bucket, I think it is. And you can tell it's organic. Usually these 3 numbers, and those 3 numbers shouldn't add up to more than 15 if it's organic. If you have a 20-20-20 or a 30-30-30, that's more chemical than organic fertilizers. And basically, with these organic fertilizers, it feeds the soil, creates a nice healthy soil for the plants to grow. And then I also have my chick magnet, or coop, they change the names on these things all the time. But this is cottonseed meal and blood meal and bone meal. And I usually will add that to the garden itself early spring, right before a good rain. and I usually only add it once a year. Iowa, the soil here is so awesome that you don't really need to add much fertilizer, in my opinion. But roses like it, trying to reestablish roses, and so I use this about once a year. We have various sprays for spray cans. The crew around here will use different sprayers for different things. That way you're not mixing too many things in one sprayer together, because you want to know if you're using Roundup on one or if you're using a fertilizer on another. It's just good to have different sprayers for different things. Yeah, that's a Headhouse. It's pretty awesome. So today we're going to talk about seed saving. Remember, we cleaned up all those plants, perennials, annuals, everything. And know that the seeds will reseed themselves if you allow them to dry properly in the garden. So you could just do it that way and not worry about trying to start seeds. But you've got to let them dry properly. So you've got to go through a period where they may not look as beautiful as you'd like them to look because they've got to dry. So like, for example, this is a green poppy head. This wouldn't be ready to reseed. So I would leave that in the garden until it dries like this. And you can see its little hat separates from this little ball. And in that little hole, all those little seeds are there. You can kind of hear them when you shake it. And then you can let them just reseed. But sometimes you want to have a seed exchange, so you'll collect the seeds. And when you collect the seeds, you want to bring them in, let them dry out. For example, we have some larkspur seeds here. We cut them off, let them dry out, and those little black seeds there are the seed heads. And then we have marigolds. Marigolds the same way. As you can see, these have dried out. They'll spill out, and this is the seed heads. All these little seeds will create a new plant for you. We also have some lichnus or rose campion, which we were trimming back on the last episode, and we collected these seeds. We're letting them dry out in here. And you can see at the bottom of there that there's all these little seeds. An important thing to remember if you are going to do a seed exchange, or if you are going to say you want to collect the seeds so that you know exactly where you want them to be planted, you want to make sure to use a paper bag, first of all, because paper breathes. If you use a plastic bag or plastic, it can create mold, so you don't want to do that. The other important thing is to remember what they are. You want to put down what it is, and when the year, I like to put the year, not necessarily the month, but the year that you collected the seed, because as each year progresses, you'll have a less germination rate. But I would say they'd be good up to 3 to 4 years as you harvest them. The other thing that's good about a plastic or a paper bag, is that you can clip them, let them dry in the bag, and then when they're ready, you'll just have all your seeds will be collected right there. And you can toss them where you want them to go specifically in the garden. If you're not that concerned and you want to just let them go, you can just, like I said, leave them out in the garden, let them dry, let them go through that dried, ugly period. Then once the seeds are done, you'll be able to tell when the seeds are out of the husks. Then you just pull those out and wait for next year. This is a potting bench we use for transplants because it's big. I can put a bunch of soil on there, and I can just take my plugs and transplant them into little pots really easy, and seeds too. You can take them out. And potting soil is also different from seed starting mix. Seed starting mix is usually a little peaty, more like peat moss. I don't like to use straight peat moss because peat moss can repel water as well as absorb it. So the important part to remember when you're using this stuff is to get it somewhat wet. Not soaking wet, but like a wrung out sponge kind of wet. What I usually do is I start my seeds also in these little trays, so you might want to get a nice little tray like this. They've got to have holes in the bottom because you always want there to be some drainage. But you can create these things out of many different things that you could find in your household, like I've seen people do it with egg cartons, or people get creative with all different kinds of products that you can use. So you don't necessarily have to buy these, but any nursery center will have these. And then once your seeds start, you've had some germination, then you're going to need to transplant them. And you can have these little plastic trays, and there's various sizes. I like to use the bigger sizes for perennial seeds that I might be starting, and then the little sizes for some of the smaller annuals that you might be starting. But I also have a different box for my seed starting so that I can pour this in the seed starting box, take them over there when they're done and ready to transplant. The other thing that's important to remember is water is always important. Now with these seed trays, the reason I like to make sure there's holes in the bottom is not only for drainage, but when you're starting seeds, it's better to float them in water and let them soak up the water from the bottom. The soil will soak up the water, and then you'll see the wetness on the top of the tray, and then you'll know to take them out. It's good because you don't want to necessarily pour water over your seedlings as they're up, because then they'll lean over and they'll flatten out, and sometimes you'll inhibit some of the growth. One of the things every good gardener needs is a watering can. You want a watering can with a nice rose on it. This is called a rose, actually. This little piece that fits on the end of your hose. And sometimes you might not want the rose on the end of the watering can, but you got to have a good watering can, because this helps create more of a gentle flowing rainfall on the seed or on the plant, whereas this is going to be a much harder flow of water that could drown the plant really quickly. And sometimes, like I say, you'll want to use both, one or the other, so to find one with a removable rose is probably smart. So again, showing you the watering technique. Say you have this and you're ready to plant some seeds, you got your seeds in there, then you'd come over here and you'd set it in this tub, and then you'll see that it's going to float there for a while. So you just leave it, let it float. You don't want to leave it in there too long. Once it's nice and moist, then you can take it out. As you can see, it's starting to absorb, and you can see it's getting darker at the top. So this is fairly moist seed starting mix, and the color changes quite drastically, and then you'll pull it on out, and you'll set it aside and let it drain, and then put it on your seed mat once it's drained. Hey, thanks for joining us today. But you know what? I do feel like I'm talking to myself a little bit. So I want to hear from you. Give me some comments in the space below here. Ask some questions, or what do you want to hear about in some of the future videos? In the meantime, have a great time out there gardening. Avoid the heat, but we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more, hit the like button, the notification bell, and subscribe to the channel.